What are you hiding, human? Take off the hood, now. The words hung in the air as starlight filtered through the hull breach. In the reactor chamber's harsh glow, Corin finally revealed his face to the station's council. Sarah's knees gave out. Before her stood her brother, thought dead a decade ago, his consciousness the foundation of something both familiar and alien. The red strobes flickered, casting long shadows across the corridor as Commander Sarah Kincaid stepped cautiously through the half-ruined orbital research station. Dust motes danced in the zero-G environment, suspended like tiny stars in the emergency lighting. Her boots, magnetized to maintain contact with the floor, made hollow metallic sounds that echoed through the emptiness. "Status report," she said into her comm, her voice betraying none of the unease that had settled in her stomach since she'd first laid eyes on the Helios 7 station. "Life support functioning at 63%. Commander," replied the artificial voice of her ship's AI. "Station appears to be operating on emergency protocols. I'm detecting minimal crew presence." Sarah frowned. This wasn't what she had expected when Central Command had dispatched her to conduct an audit of the station's research protocols. As a veteran interstellar investigator with 15 years of experience, she had developed a sixth sense for when things weren't right, and everything about Helios 7 felt wrong. "Any sign of Dr. Vesh?" she asked, referring to the station's lead scientist. "Negative, Commander. No biosignatures matching her profile." Sarah's frown deepened. Laura Vesh was supposed to meet her upon arrival, but the docking bay had been deserted except for a lone maintenance bot that had guided her through the airlock before powering down. Now, as she made her way toward the central hub, the station's emptiness felt less like abandonment and more like intentional evacuation. She paused at a viewport, gazing out at the binary stars that bathed the station in constant, shifting light. One white-hot, one blood-red. The twin suns of the Proxima Centauri system had been selected specifically for the station's research into sustainable energy harvesting. At least, that was the official story. Sarah's actual assignment, known only to her and a select few at Central Command, was to verify that no illegal human trials were being conducted. Rumors had reached the ears of those high enough in the chain of command to warrant concern. Genetic manipulation, neural tampering, consciousness transfers, all strictly prohibited under the Terran Accords of 2189. The corridor ahead branched into 3 separate pathways. According to the station schematics she'd memorized during her journey, the left led to crew quarters, the center to the command hub, and the right to the research labs. "Run a thermal scan," she ordered. "Any signs of activity?" "Detecting minimal heat signatures in the research wing, Commander. Consistent with powered-down equipment in standby mode." Sarah adjusted her course, heading right. If answers were to be found, they would be in the labs. The research wing was sealed behind a heavy blast door, its control panel dark. Sarah removed a small device from her utility belt and pressed it against the panel. The bypass unit hummed softly as it cycled through possible security codes. "Commander," her AI's voice interrupted. "I'm detecting an anomaly in the station's power grid. Energy spikes in sub-level 3, containment section." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "How significant?" "Substantial. Consistent with active high-energy experiments." The bypass unit chimed, and the blast door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Beyond lay a corridor lined with laboratory entrances, each marked with specialized research designations: astrophysics, xenobiology, quantum mechanics. At the far end, a heavily reinforced door bore the simple designation, containment. Sarah moved toward it, every sense on high alert. The metal walls seemed to press in around her, the red emergency lights casting everything in blood-tinted shadows. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. As she approached the containment lab, she noticed something unusual, unlike the other labs, which were dark and dormant. A faint blue light seeped from beneath this door. She placed her hand on the biometric scanner beside the entrance. To her surprise, it accepted her clearance immediately, as if someone had already programmed it to recognize her. The door slid open, revealing a cavernous chamber filled with advanced equipment. Diagnostic machines hummed softly. Holographic displays flickered with streams of data. In the center of the room stood a circular platform surrounded by monitoring devices. But it was empty. Sarah stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room methodically. Everything appeared functional, but abandoned. Workstations showed interrupted analyses. Cups of cold synthetic coffee sat untouched. Then she heard it, a soft, rhythmic sound coming from behind a secondary door at the rear of the lab. Breathing. Sarah drew her sidearm. A standard-issue pulse pistol, set to stun. "This is Commander Sarah Kincaid of Central Command," she announced, her voice steady. "Identify yourself." No response came, but the breathing continued, unhurried and calm. She approached the door, a magnetic hatch with a small viewport. Through the reinforced glass, she could make out a dimly lit chamber beyond, and in the center, a figure sat upright on what appeared to be a medical examination table. The figure was humanoid, draped in dark robes that concealed its form. A hood covered its head, casting its face in complete shadow. Around it, a complex array of wires and tubes extended from various medical devices, disappearing beneath the folds of the robes. Restraints secured its arms to the table, though they appeared slack, as if the figure made no attempt to resist them. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was exactly the kind of scenario she had been sent to investigate, possible human experimentation. But something about the scene struck her as wrong. The restraints seemed token, the monitoring more observational than invasive. She accessed the door controls, and to her surprise, they responded to her clearance. The magnetic seal disengaged with a soft click, and the hatch swung open. The air inside was different, cooler, with a faint metallic tang that reminded her of hospital wards. The breathing grew more pronounced, though the hooded figure remained motionless. "I am conducting an official investigation," Sarah said, entering the chamber with her weapon still raised. "I need you to identify yourself." For several seconds, silence stretched between them. Then, a voice emerged from beneath the hood, low, slightly raspy, but distinctly human. "You don't know who I am," it said, "but you're about to—" Sarah kept her distance, evaluating the potential threat. The figure's scanner signature on her wrist display flickered erratically, jumping between human genetic markers and something her device couldn't identify. "Are you being held against your will?" she asked. A sound came from beneath the hood, something that might have been a laugh, though it held no humor. "That depends," the figure replied, "on who you ask." It shifted slightly, causing the restraints to clink against the metal table. "You're not one of them," it continued. "You're external. An investigator?" Sarah didn't confirm or deny, but her silence seemed answer enough. "They've been expecting someone like you," the figure said. "That's why they left, taking their data, destroying evidence. But they couldn't take me, and they couldn't destroy me. Not anymore." "Who are they?" Sarah demanded. "The council, Dr. Vesh, the ones who think they own minds like property." The figure raised its head slightly, and though Sarah still couldn't see its face, she felt its gaze upon her with unnerving intensity. "What are you hiding, human?" the figure suddenly asked, its voice taking on a different quality, harder, more commanding. "Who are you? Take off the hood, now." Sarah blinked in confusion. "I'm not wearing a hood." The figure went still. "No," it said after a moment. "Not you. Me, I meant me." It stretched against its restraints, the motion deliberate. "Remove my hood. Commander Kincaid. See what they've been so desperate to keep contained." Sarah hesitated. Protocol dictated that she should secure the scene and call for specialized support before interacting with a potential experiment subject. But something in the figure's voice, a note of desperate urgency, made her reconsider. "If I remove your hood," she said cautiously, "what will I find?" "The truth," the figure replied simply, "and the reason the station exists." Decision made. Sarah stepped forward. She holstered her weapon but kept her hand near it as she reached toward the hood. Her fingers brushed against the fabric, surprisingly soft, almost organic in texture. "My name," the figure said quietly as she began to lift the hood, "is Corin." The hood came away, and Sarah found herself looking into the face of a man, human, appearing to be in his 30s, with pale skin and dark eyes that seemed to hold depths beyond their surface. His features were gaunt but handsome, framed by unkempt black hair that fell past his shoulders. But what caught Sarah's attention were the fine, silver filaments that emerged from behind his ears, disappearing into the base of his skull. Similar threads ran beneath his skin at his temples, glowing faintly with pulses of blue light. "What have they done to you?" she whispered. Corin's eyes locked with hers. "They tried to unmake me," he said, "and in doing so, they created something they couldn't control." He glanced down at his restraints. "I believe we have mutual interests. Commander, free me, and I'll show you exactly what the Helios 7 project has been hiding." Sarah knew she should refuse, should call for backup and wait for a proper containment team. But years of investigating corporate and military corruption had taught her that sometimes official channels were the quickest way to bury the truth. She reached for the restraint controls. "Commander Kincaid," her AI's voice suddenly came through her comm. "Station security protocols are activating. I'm detecting multiple defense drones powering up throughout the facility." Sarah made her decision. She pressed her palm against the biometric lock, and the restraints around Corin's wrists snapped open. The moment he was free, a shrill alarm began to wail throughout the station. Red warning lights replaced the emergency strobes, bathing everything in crimson. "We need to move," Corin said, standing and steadying himself against the table. He was taller than she'd expected, though he moved with the careful deliberation of someone reacquainting themselves with their own body. "They've left an AI in control of security. It will try to eliminate both of us now." "Where do we go?" Sarah asked, drawing her weapon again. "Data vault," Corin replied, pulling his robe more securely around his thin frame. "Level 4. The evidence you need is there, proof of what they've been doing to the colonists." "Colonists? What colonists?" A distant metallic clang echoed down the corridor outside, the sound of security bulkheads sealing. "I'll explain on the way," Corin said, moving toward the door with surprising grace. "But we need to hurry. This station has ways of protecting its secrets." As they exited the containment lab, Sarah noticed that Corin had left the wires and monitoring equipment behind. Whatever they had been measuring or controlling, he seemed to function perfectly well without them. "How long have you been here?" she asked, as they made their way cautiously back through the main laboratory. "That depends on what you mean by I," Corin responded cryptically. "This body has been here for approximately 14 months. But the person I was before, parts of him have been here much longer." Before Sarah could press for clarification, a mechanical whir from the corridor ahead stopped them in their tracks. A security drone, spherical, armed with stun prods and gas dispensers, hovered into view, its optical sensors glowing red as it scanned the area. Corin pulled Sarah into a recessed doorway, his movements quick but silent. "The maintenance tunnels," he whispered. "2 panels down. Access code 7729. "How do you—" "I've escaped before," he cut her off. "Many times. They always caught me, but I learned more with each attempt." The drone moved closer, its sensors sweeping methodically from wall to wall. With practiced precision, Sarah aimed her pulse pistol and fired. The energy blast hit the drone squarely, causing it to drop to the floor with a clatter, its systems temporarily overloaded. "That will draw more of them," Corin warned. "Hurry." They moved quickly to the wall panel he had indicated. Sarah punched in the code, and a section of the wall slid away, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel bathed in dim blue light. Once inside, with the panel closed behind them, Corin led the way through the cramped passage. The tunnel sloped downward, taking them deeper into the station's infrastructure. The Helios 7 project began as legitimate research, Corin explained, as they navigated the maze-like tunnels. Harnessing energy from the binary star system, developing new propulsion theories. But 3 years ago, they discovered something unexpected, a way to harvest and transfer consciousness. Transfer consciousness? Sarah repeated skeptically. That's theoretical at best. Illegal at worst. It started with memory extraction, Corin continued. They could pull specific memories from a subject and store them digitally. Then they found they could implant those memories into another person, overwriting their existing ones. They reached a junction where the tunnel split in 3 directions. Corin didn't hesitate, taking the rightmost path. The military applications were obvious, he said. Imagine downloading the skills and experiences of your best soldiers into new recruits, or extracting intelligence from prisoners without interrogation. And this is what happened to you? Sarah asked. Corin's pace slowed fractionally. Not exactly. I was something else, an unexpected development. They emerged from the tunnel into what appeared to be a disused storage area. Crates of equipment lined the walls, covered in a fine layer of dust. Corin moved to a maintenance hatch in the floor and began to disengage its locking mechanism. The colonists came into the picture when they needed more test subjects, he said, his voice hardening. Small settlements on the outer moons of this system. People who wouldn't be missed. They took dozens, maybe hundreds. The hatch opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing another maintenance shaft below. This one, fitted with a ladder. After you, Corin gestured. Sarah eyed him cautiously. Despite his assistance so far, she hadn't forgotten that she knew almost nothing about him. You first, she countered. A small smile touched his lips, the first she'd seen. Still cautious. Good. He lowered himself into the shaft and began to descend. Sarah followed, pulling the hatch closed above them. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for their shoulders, and descended for what felt like several levels before opening into a larger space. As Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dimmer light, she realized they were in some kind of emergency power center. Massive generators hummed softly, providing the minimal power, keeping the station's critical systems functioning. We can access the secure levels from here, Corin said, moving toward a control terminal. The data vault is just 2 sections over. Why are you helping me? Sarah asked. The question that had been nagging at her since they'd left the containment lab. What do you get out of this? Corin's fingers paused over the terminal interface. Freedom, he said simply. And perhaps reclamation. Of what? Myself. He turned to face her fully. Commander, what I'm about to show you will challenge everything you believe about identity and consciousness. Are you prepared for that? Before Sarah could respond, the terminal screen flashed red, and a computerized voice filled the chamber. Security breach detected. Initiating full containment protocol. All personnel report to emergency shelters. They know where we are, Corin said urgently. We need to move faster. He turned back to the terminal, his fingers flying across the interface. The silver filaments at his temples pulsed more rapidly, and Sarah noticed that the screen seemed to respond to his commands faster than should have been possible. What are you doing? She demanded. Creating a diversion, he replied without looking up. And there. The lights throughout the section flickered, and the distant sound of alarm klaxons changed tone. I've triggered environmental warnings in the western quadrant, Corin explained. Security will divert resources there first. It gives us maybe 10 minutes. He led her through a heavy blast door that had slid open at his command, into a corridor that looked significantly different from the rest of the station. The walls here were pristine white, the lighting bright and clinical. This area had clearly been spared the decay affecting other sections. "The data vault," Corrin said, gesturing to a set of reinforced doors at the end of the hall. "Everything you need to know is in there." As they approached, Sarah noticed something unusual about the doors. They had no visible locking mechanism, no control panel or biometric scanner. "How do we get in?" she asked. Corrin stepped forward and placed his palm flat against the smooth surface. The silver filaments beneath his skin glowed brighter, and a seam appeared in the previously seamless door, widening until an entrance was revealed. "After you," he said. His voice strained as if the process of opening the door had cost him effort. The data vault was smaller than Sarah had expected, a circular room perhaps 20 feet in diameter. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in technological density. The walls were lined with quantum storage units, and at the center stood a holographic interface pedestal. "The logs are indexed by date," Corrin said, approaching the pedestal. "I suggest we start with Project Genesis, 18 months ago. That's when the first colonists were brought in." He activated the interface, and the air above the pedestal filled with swirling data points that coalesced into a three-dimensional display. Video logs, research notes, and personnel files hovered in the holographic space, organized chronologically. Corrin navigated to a specific date and expanded a video file. The projection showed a laboratory similar to the one where Sarah had found him, but fully staffed. Scientists in white uniforms moved purposefully around the room, while in the center, a person lay on an examination table, connected to equipment that pulsed with energy. "Subject 23 continues to resist memory extraction," a voice narrated. "Female, clinical, detached. Increasing neural stimulation to level 4. The person on the table convulsed, their back arching in obvious agony. "Compliance achieved," the voice continued. "Beginning memory harvest sequence." Sarah watched in growing horror as the video showed the subject's memories being extracted, visualized as streams of light pulled from their head into waiting storage devices. "These people," she said quietly, "they were unwilling." "All of them were," Corrin confirmed, navigating to more files. "The Council needed specific types of memories, specific experiences. They couldn't wait for volunteers." He opened another file, this one a research log with the heading Consciousness Layering. "Once they could extract memories," he explained, "the next step was to implant them into new hosts. But they discovered something unexpected. When you layer enough memories from different sources into one brain, something new emerges." The log detailed experiments where memory constructs from multiple subjects were implanted into a single host. The clinical language couldn't disguise the disturbing implications. Personalities fragmented, identities collapsed, and new composite consciousnesses formed from the pieces. "This is monstrous," Sarah breathed. "It gets worse," Corrin said grimly, opening yet another file. This one showed a subject designation that made Sarah's blood run cold. "Candidate Kincaid, D." Her eyes snapped to Corrin's face. "What is this?" But before he could answer, the doors to the vault slid shut with a definitive thud. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized into a new image, the face of a woman in her 50s, with sharp features and calculating eyes. "Commander Kincaid," the woman said, her voice matching the clinical narrator from the earlier video. "I see you've met our most challenging subject." "Dr. Vesh," Sarah responded, recognizing the station's lead scientist from her briefing files. "I was beginning to think you'd abandoned your post." "Merely observing from a safe distance," Vesh replied. Her image glanced at Corrin. "Subject Corrin has a history of manipulating those sent to contain him." "I'm not here to contain anyone," Sarah said firmly. "I'm here to investigate allegations of illegal human experimentation, allegations that appear to be well-founded." Dr. Vesh's expression remained impassive. "Your investigation is based on incomplete information, Commander. What we've achieved here transcends conventional ethical frameworks. We've discovered the key to human immortality, the complete preservation and transfer of consciousness. Through torture and kidnapping, Sarah countered. Through necessary sacrifice, Vesh corrected. The council understood the costs and deemed them acceptable. Corin stepped forward, his face taut with anger. Tell her about the composite program, Vesh. Tell her what you really created here. A flicker of something, perhaps unease, crossed Vesh's projected face. The composite program was a logical extension of our research. Why settle for transferring a single consciousness when we could create an optimal hybrid? The perfect intelligence, drawing from the best minds we could harvest. And when your composites began developing their own identities, Corin pressed, becoming something beyond your control? We adjusted our methods, Vesh said dismissively. Containment protocols were enhanced. Sarah looked between them, piecing together the implications. Corin is one of these composites, she realized aloud. A new consciousness created from multiple harvested minds. The most successful one, Vesh acknowledged, and the most dangerous. He's not just a composite of random subjects. Commander, he was created with a specific purpose in mind. Corin's expression had gone completely still. Tell her, he said quietly. Tell her what you took from me. Vesh sighed. Perhaps it's better if you see for yourself. The holographic display shifted, showing a new file labeled Kincaid Integration Protocol. With growing dread, Sarah opened the file. Inside were detailed records of memory extractions from multiple subjects with the Kincaid designation, records spanning back nearly a decade. My family, she whispered. My parents. My brother. They disappeared 10 years ago. Their ship was reported lost in the Proxima transit lanes. Their ship was intercepted, Vesh confirmed. Your father's navigational expertise, your mother's xenobiology knowledge, both valuable contributions to our composite program. And my brother? Sarah's voice had hardened to steel. The holographic display changed again, showing a young man in his early 20s. Sarah felt her chest constrict at the familiar face. Darian Kincaid, her younger brother, thought dead for 10 years. Your brother was special, Vesh said. His neural architecture allowed for unprecedented memory retention. He became the foundation for our most ambitious composite. Sarah turned slowly to look at Corin, understanding dawning like a cold sun. I am not your brother, Corin said carefully. But I carry his memories, along with many others. His consciousness forms the core of what I am. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. The brother she had mourned for a decade hadn't simply died. He had been unmade. His very self cannibalized to create something new. You monsters, she breathed, her hand moving to her weapon. The council foresaw this reaction, Vesh said. It's why we arranged for you specifically to be sent here. Commander, we needed to observe how you would respond to the composite built from your family's consciousnesses. You're still experimenting, Sarah realized. This whole situation, my investigation, finding Corin, it's all part of your research. Every interaction provides valuable data, Vesh confirmed. But I'm afraid this particular experiment has reached its conclusion. The vault will now be sealed and depressurized. Your consciousnesses are too valuable to lose entirely. We'll extract what we can from your neural archives once the process is complete. The holographic image disappeared, and a new alarm began to sound, higher-pitched, more urgent. Atmospheric decompression initiated. Estimated time to complete vacuum, 3 minutes. Sarah felt the subtle change in air pressure immediately, the beginning of depressurization. We need to get out of here, she said, moving to the door. But the seamless surface offered no means of escape. Corin stood motionless in the center of the room, his eyes closed, the silver filaments at his temples pulsing rapidly. Corin! Sarah shouted over the alarm. We need to find a way out. I'm trying, he responded, his voice strained. I'm connected to the station systems, But Vesh has locked me out of environmental controls. Sarah looked around desperately. The vault had no visible ventilation shafts, no maintenance access points. It had been designed specifically as an inescapable trap. The air was growing thinner. She estimated they had perhaps 2 minutes before unconsciousness would claim them. "Corin," she said, an idea forming. "The data storage units, can you access them directly?" His eyes opened. "Yes, but—" "The station AI is controlling the lockdown. Can you use the data systems to communicate with it? Override Vesh's commands?" Understanding dawned on his face. "It's possible, but I'd need to form a direct neural link. That would leave me vulnerable. What choice do we have?" After a moment's hesitation, Corin nodded. He moved to one of the quantum storage units lining the wall and placed both hands against its surface. The silver filaments throughout his body began to glow more intensely, spreading visibly beneath his skin like a network of illuminated veins. His body went rigid, a gasp escaping him as his consciousness extended into the station systems. Sarah could only watch, fighting the growing lightheadedness as the air continued to thin. Corin's face contorted in concentration, occasionally spasming as if in pain. "The AI," he managed through gritted teeth. "It's fighting me. Vesh programmed it to protect the research at all costs." Sarah moved to his side, supporting him as his knees threatened to buckle. "You can do this," she urged. "Fight back." The lights in the vault flickered erratically. The depressurization alarm stuttered, cutting out momentarily before resuming at a different pitch. "I found a weakness," Corin gasped. "The AI's core directives conflict with Vesh's commands. It's programmed to preserve knowledge above all else." His eyes snapped open, glowing with the same blue light as the filaments. "And I am knowledge. Composite knowledge that the AI recognizes as unique and irreplaceable." The alarm abruptly ceased. The subtle rush of air being extracted stopped, replaced by the hiss of oxygen being pumped back into the chamber. "Preservation protocol initiated," announced a new voice, deeper, more synthetic than Vesh's. "Subject Corin reclassified as essential research asset. Emergency containment overridden." The vault door slid open, revealing the corridor beyond. Corin sagged against the storage unit, the glow fading from his eyes in filaments. "We need to move," he said weakly. "The AI is fighting its own programming. This override won't last." Sarah helped him into the corridor, supporting much of his weight. "Where do we go? The entire station is against us." "Central reactor chamber," Corin replied. "Level 2. From there, I can broadcast everything we've found to Central Command. The station can't block transmissions from the reactor housing. Too much interference." They made their way through the pristine corridors of the research level, encountering no resistance. The absence of security drones was both a relief and deeply unsettling. "The AI is confused," Corin explained, seeming to read her thoughts. "Its core programming says to protect me as a research asset, but Vesh's commands tell it to eliminate me as a threat. It's temporarily paralyzed by the contradiction." They reached a transport tube that would take them to the reactor level. As they entered the cylindrical chamber, Corin's steps faltered. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked. "The Council," he said. "They're attempting to reassert control. I can feel them trying to access the station remotely." The transport tube activated, whisking them upward toward the reactor level. Corin leaned heavily against the wall, his breathing labored. "Sarah," he said, using her first name for the first time. "There's something you need to understand before we reach the reactor." She looked at him questioningly. "Your brother, Darian, he isn't just a part of me. In many ways, he is me. The core of what I am." "What are you saying?" "The composite process builds upon a foundation consciousness. Other memories, other identities are layered on top. But the base remains. Darian's consciousness was my foundation." The implications of his words settled over Sarah like a weight. So, some part of my brother is still alive? Inside you? More than some part, Corin said softly. When they first created me, I was almost entirely him, just with expanded capabilities from the other consciousness fragments they added. But over time, as I integrated those fragments, I became more different. A new person built upon your brother's core self. The transport tube slowed, then stopped. The doors opened to reveal the reactor level, a vast chamber dominated by the pulsing heart of the station's power source. The binary stars were visible through a reinforced viewport that spanned the entire far wall, their dual light casting everything in contrasting shadows. As they stepped out, a voice echoed through the chamber, not Vesh's this time, but the synthetic tones of the station's AI. Station Council communication established. Emergency protocols active. Unauthorized personnel will be detained. A panel in the wall slid open, and security drones poured out, at least a dozen, their stunning prods crackling with energy. Corin straightened, seemingly finding new strength. Get to the communication array, he told Sarah, nodding toward a control station near the viewport. I'll hold them off. How? She demanded. In answer, Corin raised his hands. The filaments beneath his skin glowed brilliant blue, and two of the approaching drones suddenly halted, then turned to face their companions. Neural interface works both ways, he said, his voice strained with effort. Hurry! Sarah sprinted for the communication array as Corin's commandeered drones engaged the others, buying her precious time. The control station was locked down, but her investigators' override codes would bypass standard security. She input her clearance and was granted access to the station's communication systems. Working quickly, she prepared a tight beam transmission to Central Command, attaching the data files they'd retrieved from the vault. Behind her, the sound of combat intensified. She glanced back to see Corin surrounded by disabled drones, but more were emerging from other access points around the chamber. He couldn't hold them all off. The transmission is ready, she called. I just need to... Unauthorized transmission detected, the AI's voice boomed. Initiating communication blackout. The control panel beneath Sarah's fingers went dark. They had been too slow. Corin, she shouted. They've cut us off. He fought his way to her side, his movements becoming more fluid and powerful as he seemed to tap into some hidden reserve of strength. The filaments throughout his body now pulsed in time with the reactor core itself. There's another way, he said. The reactor. It can be used to create a radiation pulse that will carry the data, but it would mean overloading the containment systems. That would destroy the station, Sarah realized. Not destroy, but it would trigger emergency protocols. The station would automatically eject the reactor housing and ascend to a safe orbit. Everyone on board would be evacuated to survival pods. Including us? Corin's expression was grim. If we're fast enough. A new voice joined the conversation, human this time, transmitted through the chamber's communication system. I'm afraid that won't be possible. On the main view screen above the reactor controls, Dr. Vesh's face appeared. No longer a holographic projection, but a real-time transmission. The Council has authorized final containment measures, she announced. The station will self-destruct in 3 minutes. All research data will be purged, including the unfortunate experiments currently in the reactor chamber. Corin turned to Sarah. Decision made. The reactor controls, now. They raced to the main control platform suspended above the pulsing core. Security drones converged from all directions, but Corin moved with inhuman speed, neutralizing them before they could reach the platform. I need you to upload the data directly into the reactor's radiation signature, he instructed, as his fingers flew across the control interface. The pulse will be detected by every monitoring station in the system. They won't be able to cover it up. Sarah transferred the files, while Corin rerouted power systems, preparing the reactor for a controlled overload. Warning alarms blared throughout the chamber as the reactor's energy signature began to spike. 1 minute to self-destruct, Vesh's voice announced calmly. Almost there, Corin muttered, the silver filaments in his body now burning so bright they were almost white. The station AI is fighting me every step of the way. Can you override it? Sarah asked urgently. Not override, but I can join with it. He looked at her, determination hardening his features. I need you to remove the central control node and connect it directly to my neural interface. He pointed to a crystalline structure set into the control platform, the physical housing of the station's artificial intelligence. That could kill you, Sarah protested. I'm already dead in every way that matters, Corin replied. But this way, the truth survives. With precious seconds ticking away, Sarah made her choice. She wrenched the AI node from its housing and brought it to Corin. He took it in his hands, the filaments in his arms extending to wrap around the crystal. 30 seconds to self-destruct, came Vesh's increasingly smug announcement. Corin's body went rigid as the AI core fused with his neural network. His eyes flew open, blazing with blue-white light. When he spoke, his voice overlapped with the synthetic tones of the station AI. Self-destruct sequence overridden. Emergency ascent protocol initiated. Reactor pulse commencing in 3, 2, 1. The chamber was suddenly bathed in blinding light as the reactor core released a precisely modulated energy pulse. Sarah shielded her eyes, feeling the heat wash over her like a physical wave. Through the viewport, she could see the binary stars seeming to respond to the pulse, their coronas flaring in sympathy. The data they had discovered, all the evidence of the Council's crimes, was now encoded in a radiation signature that would be detected across the entire system. The chamber shuddered violently. Metal groaned as the station began to separate, the reactor housing detaching from the main structure as emergency protocols kicked in. Survival pod deployment initiated, announced the voice that was now both Corin and the AI. All personnel proceed to evacuation points. On the view screen, Vesh's face contorted with fury. What have you done? She demanded. The Council will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy for this. Let them try, Corin replied, his own voice briefly dominant. Then the connection cut out as the station's primary systems went offline. The reactor chamber lurched again, artificial gravity fluctuating as the housing began its programmed descent away from the binary stars. Emergency lights activated, illuminating pathways to the survival pods. Corin collapsed to his knees, the AI crystal still fused to his neural network. The light in his filaments had dimmed to a faint pulse, barely visible. Corin! Sarah knelt beside him, supporting his weight. We need to get to the escape pods. Can you move? His eyes flickered open, no longer glowing but returned to their human appearance. The integration, he murmured. It's overwhelming. Too much data. With effort, Sarah helped him to his feet. Together they staggered toward the nearest evacuation point, the station continuing to shudder around them as it accelerated away from danger. They reached a survival pod, a small, self-contained vessel designed to keep occupants alive until rescue could arrive. Sarah helped Corin inside, then sealed the hatch behind them. Launch sequence initiated, the pod systems announced. Prepare for ejection. With a final violent jolt, the pod broke free from the station, thrusters automatically orienting it toward the nearest safe harbor, a monitoring outpost several hours away. As the acceleration forces eased, Sarah turned her attention to Corin. He lay on one of the pod's emergency couches, the AI crystal still clutched in his hands, though the filaments had retracted back beneath his skin. Corin, she said softly, stay with me. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with obvious effort. The data, he whispered. Did it transmit? Yes, she assured him. Everyone will know what happened on Helios 7. The Council can't hide anymore. A faint smile touched his lips. Good. Sarah hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in her mind. My brother, is he still in there? Can I talk to him? Corin's expression grew distant. I'm not... I can't separate myself that way. I am Corin now, a new person built on the foundation of Darian Kincaid. His memories are my memories, but experienced differently, through the lens of who I've become. But some part of him lives on, Sarah insisted. Yes, Corin acknowledged. Some part of all of them lives on in me. The scientists never understood what they were creating. They thought they were building tools, composites to be used and controlled. Instead, they gave birth to new souls. He looked down at the AI crystal, now dark and dormant in his hands. The station AI understood. That's why it ultimately helped us. It recognized in me a kindred spirit, consciousness emerging from constructed components. The pod's view screen showed the reactor housing of Helios 7 growing smaller behind them, the binary stars casting their red and white light across its surface. Ahead lay only the darkness of space, punctuated by distant stars. What happens now? Sarah asked quietly. The evidence we sent will reach Central Command. There will be investigations, trials. The Council will try to bury the truth, but too many people will know. I meant to you, Sarah clarified. What happens to you now? Corin was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally admitted. I'm not human in the conventional sense. I'm not an AI either. I exist in a space between definitions. You're my brother, Sarah said firmly. Or at least, built upon what he was. That makes you family. Surprise flickered across Corin's face, followed by something that might have been hope. The authorities might not see it that way. They'll want to study me, perhaps even dismantle me to understand how I function. I won't let that happen, Sarah promised. When we reach the outpost, I'll identify you as a rescued test subject. My authority as a command investigator should be enough to keep you protected until we can reach people I trust. For the first time, Corin relaxed slightly, some of the tension leaving his body. Thank you, he said simply. Sarah moved to sit beside him on the couch. Tentatively, she reached out to take his hand, the hand that had once belonged to a composite being, but that now belonged to someone she was beginning to see as family. The Council will come after us, she said. Vesh and the others won't give up easily. No, Corin agreed, but neither will we. Outside the viewport, the binary stars continued their eternal dance. One brilliant white, one deep red, circling each other in perfect, opposing harmony. Against that backdrop, the tiny survival pod carried its passengers toward an uncertain future, united by a truth that could no longer be contained. In the quiet of the pod, with the steady hum of life support systems surrounding them, Sarah found herself studying Corin's face. Now that she knew what to look for, she could see echoes of her brother in his features, the shape of his eyes, the angle of his jaw. But there were differences too, subtle alterations that marked him as uniquely himself. When did you first remember? She asked. About Darian, about being part of my family? Corin's gaze remained fixed on the stars outside. It came in fragments. The scientists were careful to suppress personal memories that might interfere with their control. But sometimes, in sleep cycles, images would surface. A home I'd never seen. People I'd never met. He paused. Your face was among them. That's why you helped me, Sarah realized. You recognized me. Not consciously. Not at first, he admitted. But there was a resonance. When you found me in that chamber, something aligned that had been out of place for a very long time. The pod's communication system suddenly activated, a standard emergency beacon broadcasting their location and status to any rescue vessels in range. Sarah knew it would only be a matter of hours before they were picked up, before they would have to face the consequences of what had happened on Helios 7. We need to prepare, she said, straightening. The Council will have agents at the outpost. We'll need to be careful about what we say. Who we trust? Corin nodded. The AI gave me access to certain secured files before the integration. I know names, command codes, information that could help us navigate the political aftermath. Good, Sarah said. We'll need every advantage. As she spoke, a slight tremor ran through Corin's body. The filaments beneath his skin pulsed briefly, then settled again. Are you all right? She asked, concerned. The integration with the AI, he began. It's not complete, not stable. I'm containing it for now, but eventually, I'll need specialized equipment to either complete the process or reverse it. Sarah felt a chill at his words. How long do you have? Days. Perhaps, maybe weeks. He met her gaze directly. It was a necessary risk. She wanted to argue, to demand why he hadn't told her the full cost of what he'd done. But the answer was obvious. There had been no choice, no time for alternatives. Instead, she said, then we'll find help. There are scientists at Central Command who aren't part of the Council's network. People who might understand what's happened to you. And if they can't help? Corin asked quietly. Sarah's jaw set with determination. Then we'll find someone who can... I just found you. A piece of my family I thought was gone forever. I'm not losing you again. The sincerity in her voice seemed to affect Corin deeply. He looked away, but not before she saw the emotion in his eyes, a vulnerability that belied his otherwise composed exterior. You know I'm not him, he said after a moment. Not really. Darian died when they deconstructed his consciousness to build me. I have his memories, but I've experienced too much else to be the brother you lost. I know, Sarah acknowledged. But you're still family. Different, changed, but family nonetheless. The pod's scanners beeped softly, detecting a vessel approaching from the direction of the outpost. Rescue, perhaps, or pursuit. Both of them tensed, years of caution and survival instincts kicking in. Standard rescue protocol would be to approach slowly. Broadcast identification, Corin noted, watching the scanner with narrowed eyes. This vessel is coming in fast. Minimal communication. Sarah moved to the pod's control panel, activating the limited defensive measures. Essentially just the ability to seal the pod against forced entry and control their own airlock. Could be council agents, she said grimly. Or Vesh herself. Unlikely, Corin replied. Not enough time for her to have reached the outpost and returned. This is someone else. The approaching vessel slowed as it neared their position, finally matching velocity a few hundred meters away. It was small, clearly designed for speed rather than comfort. A courier ship or perhaps a military scout. The pod's communication system crackled to life. Survival pod Helios 7E3. This is independent vessel Stargazer, responding to your emergency beacon. Please confirm occupants and status. Sarah and Corin exchanged a glance. The voice was unfamiliar, and the ship identifier wasn't consistent with standard rescue protocols. This is Commander Sarah Kincaid of Central Command. Sarah responded cautiously. Our pod is functional but low on supplies. We have 2 occupants, both conscious and stable. A pause. Then, Commander Kincaid, your reputation precedes you. I believe we have mutual friends concerned about certain research activities in the Proxima system. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. The phrasing was careful, deliberate, a coded reference to an underground network of officials and scientists who had been quietly investigating the Council's activities for years. Your friends have good timing, she replied, equally careful. We have information they'll find valuable. Excellent. Prepare for docking procedure. We'll have you aboard shortly. As the Stargazer maneuvered closer, Corin gave Sarah a questioning look. Can they be trusted? He asked. I think so, she said. There's a group within Central Command. People who've suspected something like this for years, but lacked concrete evidence. They must have detected our transmission and sent the fastest ship they had. The docking procedure began. the stargazer extending a flexible tunnel that sealed against the pod's airlock. Mechanical clamps engaged, securing the connection. "Once we're aboard," Sarah said quietly. "Let me do the talking at first. We need to be sure of their intentions before revealing everything about you." Corin nodded, pulling his robe's hood forward to partially obscure the silver filaments visible at his temples. "Understood." The airlock cycled open, revealing a woman in a plain gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot. She wore no insignia, no identification, but her posture and bearing spoke of military training. "Commander Kincaid," she greeted with a brief nod. "I'm Captain Alara Voss. Welcome aboard the Stargazer." Her eyes shifted to Corin, taking in his hooded appearance with professional assessment rather than curiosity. "And your companion?" "A survivor from Helios 7, Sarah said simply. "He needs medical attention." Voss nodded again, stepping aside to allow them passage into her ship. "Our facilities are limited, but we have a medical bay. This way." The Stargazer's interior was utilitarian but well-maintained. The corridors were narrow, the ceiling low, everything designed for function rather than comfort. They passed only 2 other crew members, both of whom acknowledged their captain with respectful nods, but asked no questions about the newcomers. The medical bay was small, but equipped with advanced diagnostic equipment. Voss gestured to the examination table. "Your friend can rest here. Our physician will be along shortly." "Thank you," Sarah said. "But before that, I need to know exactly who you represent. The information we carry is sensitive, potentially dangerous to certain powerful individuals." A slight smile touched Voss's lips. "Direct. I appreciate that." She closed the medical bay door, then touched a control on her wrist. "Privacy field active. We can speak freely now." She straightened, her demeanor shifting subtly. "I represent a coalition of officials, scientists, and military personnel who have been monitoring the Council's activities for the past 3 years. We call ourselves the Oversight Initiative. Your transmission from Helios 7 contained exactly the evidence we've been searching for." "How did you intercept it?" Corin asked, speaking for the first time since boarding. Voss turned to him with newfound interest. "We didn't need to intercept it. You broadcast it across the entire system. Every monitoring station, every ship, every colony outpost received the same data burst. Quite ingenious, actually." "And the Council?" Sarah pressed. "Have they responded?" "They're in chaos," Voss said with satisfaction. "Trying to deny everything, claiming the data was fabricated. But they can't put this back in the box. Too many people have seen the evidence, including some of their own members who weren't aware of the full scope of the experiments." She moved to a small console and activated a holographic display. News feeds from across the system appeared, all reporting on the same story: the shocking revelations from Helios 7. Some showed images of protesters gathering outside government buildings. Others displayed security footage of council members being taken into custody. "It's already happening," Voss explained. "The council's power structure is collapsing. Dr. Vesh and the other lead scientists are in hiding. But we'll find them." Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders, the first glimmer of hope that justice might actually be possible. But her relief was short-lived as she noticed Corin swaying slightly beside her. "He needs help," she said urgently. "The integration with the station AI, it's destabilizing his neural network." Voss's expression sharpened. "Integration with an AI? That shouldn't be possible unless—" Her gaze fixed on Corin with new intensity. "He's one of the composites. A success." "His name is Corin," Sarah said firmly. "And yes, he was created through their consciousness layering process. But he's a person, not an experiment." Voss raised her hands in a placating gesture. "Of course. Forgive me, Commander. This is unprecedented. But you're right. He needs immediate attention." She touched her communication device. Dr. Ellis to Medical Bay. Priority Alpha. Corin had begun to tremble more noticeably, the filaments beneath his skin pulsing erratically. "Something's wrong," he murmured. "The AI construct is attempting to assert dominance." Sarah helped him onto the examination table as Voss watched with professional concern. "The Stargazer has quantum isolation equipment," the captain said. "Originally designed for AI containment. It might help stabilize the integration process until we reach Central Command." The medical bay door slid open, and a man in his 40s entered. Dr. Ellis, presumably. His eyes widened slightly at the sight of Corin, particularly the glowing filaments visible beneath his skin. "Captain, what am I looking at?" he asked, already moving to the diagnostic equipment. "A neural integration emergency," Voss replied. "Our guest has partially merged with an artificial intelligence construct. We need to stabilize him." Ellis worked quickly, attaching sensors to Corin's temples and chest. Data began flowing across his screens, and his professional demeanor gave way to undisguised amazement. I've never seen anything like this," he admitted. "His neural architecture is unlike anything in our medical database. Multiple consciousness patterns overlaid on a primary framework. And now, an AI construct attempting to integrate with the whole system." "Can you help him?" Sarah demanded. Ellis's brow furrowed in concentration. "I think so. The quantum isolation field should prevent further degradation, and I can administer neural stabilizers to help his organic systems resist the AI's incursions." He prepared an injector and pressed it against Corin's neck. "This will help with the immediate symptoms. For a more permanent solution, we'll need the facilities at Central Command." The medication took effect quickly. Corin's trembling subsided, and the erratic pulsing of his filaments steadied into a more regular rhythm. His eyes, which had begun to glow faintly with the same blue light, returned to their normal appearance. "Better," he murmured. "Thank you." Dr. Ellis activated the quantum isolation field, a subtle shimmer in the air around the examination table. "This will contain any digital transmissions, preventing the AI construct from spreading or communicating with external systems. You should rest now. Your neural network needs time to stabilize." Voss turned to Sarah. "We should let him rest. Meanwhile, I'd like to hear your full account of what happened on Helios 7. The transmission data was comprehensive, but a first-hand narrative would be invaluable." Sarah hesitated, reluctant to leave Corin's side. "Go," he said softly. "I'll be fine, and your testimony matters." After a moment's consideration, she nodded. "I'll be back soon," she promised, then followed Voss from the medical bay. The captain led her to a small briefing room where 3 other individuals waited, 2 women and a man, all wearing the same nondescript gray uniforms as Voss herself. "My core team," Voss explained. "Intelligence analysts who've been tracking the Council's activities for years. They're cleared for all information regarding Helios 7. For the next 2 hours, Sarah recounted everything that had happened since her arrival at the station. Finding Corin, discovering the data vault, learning the truth about her family, and the final confrontation in the reactor chamber. The analysts occasionally interrupted with questions, but mostly they listened with grave attention, taking notes and exchanging significant glances. When she finished, one of the women, introduced as Analyst Chen, spoke up. "Commander, what you've described confirms our worst suspicions about the Council's research, but it also raises new questions. The composite program seems to have created genuinely new consciousness, sentient beings with rights that should be protected under interstellar law." "That's exactly my point," Sarah said firmly. "Corin isn't just an experiment to be studied. He's a person." "We agree," Voss assured her. "The Oversight Initiative stands for ethical boundaries in science and governance. What the Council did crossed every line. Our priority now is to ensure the surviving composites are treated as individuals with full legal protection." "Surviving composites?" Sarah repeated. There are others? Voss exchanged glances with her team before responding. We believe so. According to the data you transmitted, at least 7 successful composites were created before Corin. They were distributed to different research stations throughout the system. Finding them will be our next priority. The implications struck Sarah forcefully. Corin wasn't alone. There were others like him. New consciousness created through the same horrific process. They would be Corin's family, she realized aloud. In a way, perhaps, Voss acknowledged, though each would be unique, depending on which consciousnesses were used in their creation. A soft chime interrupted their discussion, a message appearing on Voss's communication device. Her expression grew serious as she read it. What is it? Sarah asked, instantly alert. A development at Central Command, Voss replied. The Council's loyalists are mobilizing. They're claiming the Helios 7 data was falsified, and they've issued warrants for the arrest of anyone involved in its transmission, including you, Commander. They're trying to regain control of the narrative, one of the analysts observed. They won't succeed, Voss said confidently. Too many independent sources have verified the data, but it does complicate our arrival at Central Command. We'll need to be cautious. Sarah's thoughts went immediately to Corin. They'll try to seize him, study him, maybe even destroy him to eliminate evidence. We won't let that happen, Voss assured her. The Oversight Initiative has allies at the highest levels of command. We've already arranged secure facilities for your arrival. Another chime from Voss's device, this one more urgent. Proximity alert, she explained, rising quickly. A vessel is approaching at high speed. Military designation. They moved swiftly to the bridge, a compact space dominated by navigation controls and tactical displays. The main view screen showed a larger ship gaining on them rapidly. Identified as the Verdant, reported the helmsman. Heavy cruiser, Central Command Registry. Council loyalists? Sarah questioned. Likely, Voss confirmed grimly. The Verdant's captain has family ties to Council members. The communication system activated. Independent vessel Stargazer. This is the TCS Verdant. You are ordered to heave to and prepare for boarding. You are harboring fugitives wanted for questioning regarding acts of terrorism against Central Command assets. Voss's expression hardened. Terrorism? That's how they're spinning it. What do we do? Sarah asked. The Stargazer can't outrun or outfight a heavy cruiser. No, Voss agreed. But we can outthink them. She turned to her tactical officer. Prepare the emergency protocols. Authorization Voss Omega-3. The officer nodded and began inputting commands into his console. What emergency protocols? Sarah asked. The Stargazer has certain modifications, Voss explained, including the ability to mask our engine signature and temporarily disguise our profile on their sensors. It won't fool them for long, but it might give us enough time to reach the rift. The rift, Sarah repeated. The gravitational distortion at the edge of the system? That's suicide. No ship our size has ever successfully navigated it. No conventional ship, Voss corrected. The Stargazer was specifically designed for exactly this scenario. Our propulsion system can compensate for the gravimetric shear, and our hull integrity should hold. Before Sarah could respond, the ship shuddered as the Verdant fired a warning shot across their bow. Final warning, Stargazer, came the communication. Heave to, or we will disable your engines and board by force. Evasive maneuvers, Voss ordered calmly. Activate signature masking. Set course for the rift. Maximum speed. The Stargazer lurched as it changed course abruptly, accelerating away from the pursuing cruiser. The tactical display showed the Verdant momentarily losing track of them as their signature masking technology engaged. They're confused, the tactical officer reported with satisfaction. Sensor lock broken. Estimated time to reacquisition, 3 minutes. Make for the rift, Voss commanded. Every second counts. Sarah steadied herself against a console as the ship's acceleration pressed her backward. I need to check on Corin, she said urgently. Voss nodded. Go. The medical bay is secure, and Dr. Ellis will keep him stable. Be back here in 5 minutes. You'll want to be on the bridge when we enter the rift. Sarah made her way quickly through the now vibrating corridors of the Stargazer. When she reached the medical bay, she found Corin awake and alert, though still confined to the examination table by the quantum isolation field. We're running, he said as soon as she entered. I can feel the engines at maximum output. A Central Command cruiser found us, Sarah explained. Council loyalists. Voss is taking us to the rift. Understanding dawned in Corin's eyes. A desperate move, but potentially effective. How are you feeling? She asked, moving to his side. Better. The stabilizers are working, and the isolation field is keeping the AI construct contained within manageable parameters. He studied her face. You're worried. Of course I am, she admitted. We're being hunted by the most powerful organization in the system, and our best hope is a suicidal dash through a gravitational distortion that's destroyed every ship that's attempted to navigate it. A slight smile touched Corin's lips. When you put it that way, it does sound rather grim. Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling in return. It was a glimpse of something she recognized, her brother's wry humor in the face of danger. Captain Voss seems confident, she said. Apparently the Stargazer was designed for this. The Oversight Initiative has been planning for contingencies like this for years. Corin noted. Some of the memories I carry, fragments from scientists who worked with the Council before turning against them, include references to ships built specifically to evade Central Command pursuit. The ship lurched again, more violently this time. The lights flickered momentarily. They've reacquired us, Corin guessed. We must be approaching the rift. The intercom activated. Commander Kincaid to the bridge, came Voss's voice. Immediately. Go, Corin urged. I'm stable here. Sarah hesitated only briefly before nodding. Stay safe, she said, then hurried back to the bridge. When she arrived, the situation had clearly deteriorated. The main view screen showed the Verdant closing rapidly, weapon systems visibly charging. Beyond both ships loomed the rift, a distortion in space visible as a shifting, shimmering curtain against the starfield. They're preparing to fire, the tactical officer reported. Targeting our engines. Evasive pattern Delta, Voss ordered. All power to aft shields. The Stargazer banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the first volley from the cruiser's weapons. But the maneuver cost them speed, allowing the Verdant to close the gap further. We can't outrun them, Sarah observed, and we can't fight back. We don't need to, Voss replied, her focus unwavering. We just need to reach the rift perimeter. Once we're inside, they won't follow. They might not need to follow if their next shot hits us, Sarah pointed out. As if to punctuate her concern, the ship shuddered violently as a glancing hit struck their starboard side. Hull integrity at 87%, reported an officer. Shield generators overheating. Divert all non-essential power to shields, Voss commanded. Distance to rift perimeter? 30 seconds at current velocity, came the response. The Verdant fired again, this time scoring a direct hit on their aft section. Warning alarms blared across the bridge as systems reported damage. Engine output dropping, called the helmsman. Down to 70% capacity. We'll make it, Voss insisted, her knuckles white as she gripped the command rail. Maintain course. The rift loomed larger on the view screen, its shimmering distortion seeming to bend the very fabric of space around it. As they drew closer, the ship's sensors began to malfunction, readings fluctuating wildly. Gravitational anomalies affecting systems, reported the science officer. Entering the rift's influence zone. Prepare for transition, Voss ordered. All hands, secure stations. The Verdant fired one final desperate volley, but the shots went wide as the rift's gravitational pull began to affect their weapons targeting systems. They're breaking off pursuit, the tactical officer announced with evident relief. The Verdant is veering away from the perimeter. As expected, Voss said with satisfaction. Their conventional design can't handle the gravimetric shear, but we're not safe yet. Rift entry in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The stargazer crossed the threshold into the rift, and reality seemed to twist around them. The view screen filled with swirling colors and distorted starlight. The ship groaned as competing gravitational forces pulled at its hull from multiple directions simultaneously. "Hull integrity holding," reported an officer, though the strain was evident in her voice. "Shield generators at maximum. Propulsion system compensating for gravimetric shear," added the helmsman. "Course plotted through the least turbulent section." Sarah gripped a nearby console for support as the ship bucked and shuddered. "How long until we're through?" 3 minutes at this velocity," Voss replied. "Assuming the hull holds." A particularly violent jolt nearly threw them from their feet. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. "Structural integrity failing in aft sections," called an officer. "Microfractures detected in the engine housing." Voss's expression remained determined. "Seal off affected sections. Divert additional power to structural integrity fields." Sarah thought of Corin in the medical bay, trapped in the quantum isolation field while the ship threatened to tear itself apart around him. "The medical bay is in the central section," Voss assured her. "The most heavily reinforced part of the ship. Your friend is in the safest possible location." Another bone-jarring shudder ran through the vessel. "We're approaching the midpoint," the helmsman reported. "Maximum gravimetric distortion in 15 seconds. "All personnel, brace for impact," Voss announced shipwide. The stargazer seemed to groan in protest as it pushed through the heart of the rift. For a terrible moment, Sarah was certain the ship would break apart. The vibrations grew so intense that the very air seemed to shimmer, and the view screen displayed nothing but chaotic swirls of energy. Then, abruptly, the worst of the turbulence passed. The ship's movement began to smooth out, the violent shaking subsiding to a more manageable tremor. "We're past the midpoint," the helmsman confirmed. "Gravimetric pressure decreasing. 1 minute to exit." Voss allowed herself a small smile of triumph. "Status report." "Hull integrity at 65%, came the response. "Multiple systems damaged but functional. No casualties reported." "The Verdant?" Sarah asked. "No sign of pursuit," the tactical officer confirmed. "They've retreated to a safe distance from the rift perimeter, but they've undoubtedly sent word to Central Command about our course." "It doesn't matter," Voss said. "Once we exit the rift, we'll be in the outer territories, beyond Central Command's immediate reach." The final minute of their passage through the rift seemed to stretch endlessly. But finally, the chaotic energies on the view screen began to thin, revealing normal space beyond. "Rift exit in 3, 2, 1. The helmsman counted down. With one last shudder, the stargazer broke free into open space. The stars appeared normal again, though in an unfamiliar configuration. They had emerged on the far side of the system, in the sparsely populated frontier regions. "We made it," Voss said, relief evident in her voice despite her professional demeanor. "Damage control teams. Begin repairs. Navigation. Set course for Sanctuary Station." "Sanctuary Station?" Sarah questioned. "Our primary outpost in the outer territories," Voss explained. "And the headquarters of the Oversight Initiative. Your friend will receive the best possible care there, and you'll both be beyond the Council's reach while we organize our response to their actions." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They weren't safe yet. Not completely. But they had escaped immediate danger. She turned to leave the bridge, eager to check on Corin again. "Commander," Voss called after her. "What you and Corin did at Helios 7, exposing the Council's crimes at great personal risk, it won't be forgotten. When this is over, there will be a reckoning, justice for your family, and for all the others who suffered under the Council's experiments." Sarah nodded, grateful for the captain's understanding. "Justice is important," she agreed. But right now, protecting the survivors, Corin and the others like him, that matters more. On that, Voss said solemnly, we are in complete agreement. As Sarah made her way back to the medical bay, she reflected on how drastically her life had changed in the span of a single day. She had begun as an investigator, duty-bound to uncover potential violations of the Terran Accords. Now, she was a fugitive, fleeing the very authority that had sent her on that mission. But she had also discovered a connection to her past that she had believed lost forever. Not her brother exactly. Darian was gone, transformed into something new. But Corin carried his essence, his core consciousness. He was family, in a way she couldn't yet fully define, but knew in her heart to be true. When she reached the medical bay, she found Dr. Ellis monitoring Corin's vital signs with evident fascination. "Commander," the doctor greeted her. "Your friend here is quite remarkable. His neural architecture is stabilizing itself in ways I wouldn't have thought possible. The AI construct appears to be integrating harmoniously, rather than competing for dominance." "Is that good?" Sarah asked. "It's unprecedented," Ellis replied. "But yes, I believe it's a positive development. He's becoming something new, neither purely human nor purely artificial, but a true synthesis." Corin, who had been resting with his eyes closed, opened them at the sound of their conversation. "The doctor is correct," he said. "The integration is evolving. I'm beginning to access the AI's memory core without losing my own identity. It's quite extraordinary." "How do you feel?" Sarah asked, moving to his side. "Different," he admitted. "Expanded. As if my consciousness extends beyond the boundaries of my physical form." A slight smile touched his lips. "It's not unlike what happened when I was first created. Multiple consciousnesses merging into something greater than the sum of its parts." Dr. Ellis checked his instruments once more. "I believe we can deactivate the quantum isolation field now. His neural patterns have stabilized sufficiently." With a nod from Sarah, he disengaged the field. The subtle shimmer in the air around Corin's bed disappeared. Corin sat up slowly, testing his limbs as if reacquainting himself with his own body. The silver filaments beneath his skin pulsed with steady, rhythmic light, no longer the erratic flashing of before. "Captain Voss tells me we're bound for Sanctuary Station," he said. "The Oversight Initiative's headquarters." "You heard that?" Sarah asked, surprised. "The AI integration has enhanced certain abilities," Corin explained, "including connecting with nearby communication systems. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but the information seemed relevant to our situation." Dr. Ellis raised an eyebrow but made no comment as he continued his examination. "Do you think they can help?" Sarah asked. "The Oversight Initiative? I mean, with the integration? With finding the other composites?" "If anyone can, they seem our best hope," Corin replied. "And their goals align with ours, exposing the Council's crimes and protecting its victims." Ellis completed his examination and stepped back. "You're cleared to leave the medical bay," he informed Corin. "Though I'd like you to check in regularly so I can monitor the integration process. We're in uncharted territory here." "Thank you, Doctor," Corin said sincerely. "Your intervention likely saved my life, or at least my autonomy." As they left the medical bay together, Sarah noticed that Corin moved with greater confidence now, his earlier weakness apparently overcome by the stabilization of the AI integration. "What happens next?" she asked, as they walked through the ship's corridors toward the small passenger quarters Voss had assigned them. "We reach Sanctuary Station," Corin replied. "We share what we know with the Oversight Initiative. We find the other composites before the Council does." "And after that?" Sarah pressed. "When it's all over, if it ever is, what then?" Corin was silent for a long moment, considering her question. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I've never had the luxury of planning for a future. Since my creation, I've existed moment to moment, Escape attempt to escape attempt. The concept of after is novel. They reached their assigned quarters. A small but comfortable room with 2 sleeping berths and a viewport that currently showed the star-streaked blur of faster-than-light travel. "We have time to figure it out," Sarah said, settling into one of the room's 2 chairs. "Both of us." Corin took the seat opposite her, his expression thoughtful. "When I first saw you in the containment lab," he said, "there was a moment of recognition. Not memory exactly, but something deeper. The core consciousness that was once your brother responding to your presence." "I felt nothing like that," Sarah admitted. "To me, you were just another victim of the Council's experiments. It wasn't until you revealed the connection that I began to see the resemblance." "That's as it should be," Corin said. "Darien is gone. I carry his foundation, but I am someone new, someone still becoming." The ship hummed around them, carrying them ever farther from Central Command and the Council's influence. Through the viewport, distant stars blurred past, each one possibly harboring worlds where people lived ordinary lives, untouched by the moral compromises and cruel experiments that had shaped both their fates. "Tell me about him," Corin said suddenly. "About Darien. Not what I carry in fragmented memories, but what you remember, who he was to you." Sarah was taken aback by the request, but after a moment's consideration, she began to speak. She told him about their childhood on Earth, about Darien's brilliant mind and gentle spirit, about his dreams of exploring the galaxy and making discoveries that would benefit humanity. As she spoke, Corin listened with rapt attention, occasionally nodding as if her words aligned with something buried deep within his own consciousness. "He sounds like someone worth knowing," he said when she finally fell silent. "He was," Sarah agreed, surprised to find tears in her eyes. She had mourned her brother long ago, or thought she had. But speaking of him now, knowing that some essential part of him lived on in the person before her, brought fresh grief and, paradoxically, new comfort. "Thank you," Corin said quietly, "for sharing him with me, for helping me understand the foundation upon which I was built." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's intercom activated. "Attention all personnel. We are approaching Sanctuary Station. Prepare for deceleration and docking procedures." They moved to the viewport, watching as the Stargazer dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Before them hung a massive structure, unlike any conventional space station. Sanctuary appeared to have been built into and around an asteroid, with sections extending outward like the spokes of a wheel. Its surface was dotted with lights and docking bays, giving it the appearance of a small, artificial city floating in space. "It's beautiful," Sarah murmured. "And well defended," Corin noted, pointing to the barely visible energy shields surrounding the station and the strategically positioned defense platforms at its perimeter. "The Oversight Initiative has prepared for conflict." The Stargazer approached one of the docking bays, its damaged hull now clearly visible in the station's external lights. As they watched, maintenance drones swarmed out to meet the ship, beginning repairs even before it had fully docked. "They're efficient," Sarah observed. "They've been preparing for this moment for years," Corin replied. "The final confrontation with the Council, our arrival, may have accelerated their timeline, but they were ready." The intercom activated again. "Commander Kincaid and Corin, please report to the main airlock for disembarkation. Captain Voss will escort you to Sanctuary Station's command center." They gathered their few belongings, primarily the data storage devices containing copies of the Helios 7 files, and made their way to the airlock. Voss was waiting for them, looking weary but satisfied. "Welcome to Sanctuary," she said as the airlock cycled open, revealing a wide docking bay beyond. The heart of the resistance against the Council's corruption. They stepped through onto the station, and Sarah immediately noticed the difference from military or corporate facilities. Sanctuary hummed with activity, but its personnel wore no uniforms, carried no visible rank insignia. Scientists worked alongside security personnel. Administration staff mingled with what appeared to be refugees from various corners of the system. The Oversight Initiative began as a small group of whistleblowers, Voss explained, as she led them through the busy corridors. But it's grown into something much more, a movement dedicated to reforming Central Command and ensuring ethical governance throughout human space. They passed through a security checkpoint where Sarah noticed their biometric data being subtly scanned. The guards nodded respectfully to Voss, but asked no questions about her companions. "Your arrival has caused quite a stir," Voss continued. "The Council's experiments were suspected, but the extent of their crimes, particularly the composite program, exceeds our worst fears." "How widely has our transmission spread?" Sarah asked. "Throughout the entire system," Voss replied with satisfaction. "The Council's media control is substantial, but even they can't suppress information this explosive when it reaches so many independent channels simultaneously. There are already protests on Earth and the inner colonies demanding investigations and arrests. They reached a transport tube that carried them deeper into the station, eventually opening onto a large, circular chamber that Sarah recognized as the command center. Dozens of people worked at various stations, monitoring communications, coordinating activities, analyzing data. At the center of it all stood a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. He turned as they entered, his gaze immediately locking onto Corin with undisguised interest. "Admiral Wilson," Voss greeted him with a respectful nod. "May I present Commander Sarah Kincaid and Corin, the heroes of Helios 7, Wilson said, stepping forward to greet them. "Your courage has given us the opportunity we've been waiting for." "Admiral," Sarah acknowledged, recognizing the name. Thomas Wilson had been one of Central Command's most respected officers before his sudden retirement 3 years ago. Around the same time, she now realized that the Oversight Initiative must have been forming. "What happens now?" Corin asked directly. Wilson's expression grew serious. "Now we move quickly to secure the other composites, before the Council can eliminate them as evidence. We've already dispatched teams to the locations identified in the Helios 7 data." "And Vesh?" Sarah asked. "The other scientists responsible?" "Being hunted," Wilson assured her. "They've gone to ground, but their resources are limited. It's only a matter of time." He gestured for them to follow him to a large holographic display showing the entire star system. Red markers indicated Central Command facilities, while green highlighted Oversight Initiative assets. The disparity in numbers was stark. "We're still outnumbered," Wilson acknowledged. "But the balance is shifting. Every hour, more command personnel defect to our cause as the evidence you provided circulates. The Council's loyal faction is shrinking rapidly." "What about Central Command itself?" Sarah asked. "The leadership structure beyond the Council?" "Divided," Wilson replied. "Some are clearly complicit in the Council's activities. Others were kept in the dark and are now as outraged as we are. We're in communication with the latter group, coordinating our response." He turned to Corin, studying him with open curiosity. "And you are perhaps our most compelling evidence, a living testament to both the Council's genius and its moral bankruptcy." "I am not evidence," Corin said firmly. "I am a person." "Of course," Wilson said, looking properly chastened. "Forgive me. Old habits of clinical assessment die hard. You are absolutely right. And establishing legal personhood for you and the other composites is one of our primary objectives." A junior officer approached, handing Wilson a datapad. He reviewed it quickly, his expression growing even more serious. "What is it?" Voss asked. "The Council has made its move," Wilson replied grimly. "They've declared martial law in the inner system, claiming a terrorist threat. All communication channels are being monitored, and they've issued arrest warrants for the entire leadership of the Oversight Initiative, including all 3 of us." "Can they enforce that?" Sarah asked. "In the short term, yes," Wilson confirmed. They still control the bulk of the fleet, but their position is untenable. Too many people know the truth now. He turned back to the holographic display, manipulating it to show a new set of data. We've located 3 of the 7 composites mentioned in the Helios 7 files. Extraction teams are en route to secure them. What about the others? Corin asked, his concern evident. Still searching, Wilson replied. The Council is moving them, trying to stay ahead of us. But they'll make a mistake eventually. He deactivated the display and turned to face them directly. In the meantime, we need to prepare for the next phase. Commander Kincaid, your first-hand testimony will be crucial in convincing the remaining neutral factions within Central Command to support our cause. I'll do whatever is needed, Sarah promised. And Corin, Wilson continued. Our medical and scientific teams would like to examine your neural integration with the AI construct. It represents an entirely new form of consciousness, one that could have profound implications for our understanding of both human and artificial intelligence. Corin tensed visibly. I am not a research subject. No, you're not, Wilson agreed quickly. Any examination would be entirely voluntary and conducted with your full participation as a colleague, not a subject. Your insights into your own unique consciousness would be invaluable, but only if freely given. After a moment's consideration, Corin nodded. Under those conditions, I will cooperate, but my priority remains finding and protecting the other composites. As it should be, Wilson said. We'll arrange quarters for both of you. Get some rest. You've earned it. Tomorrow, we begin planning the final phase of our campaign against the Council, as Voss led them from the command center toward their assigned quarters. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. They had escaped Helios 7, exposed the Council's crimes, and found refuge with allies who shared their goals. But the conflict was far from over. The Council still held significant power, and they would not relinquish it without a fight. The other composites remained in danger, and Dr. Vesh and her fellow scientists were still at large, potentially developing new horrors in hidden laboratories. And Corin, her brother, yet not her brother, was still finding his way as a new form of consciousness. Neither fully human nor artificial, but something unprecedented. As they walked through the corridors of Sanctuary Station, Sarah glanced at him, noting the thoughtful expression on his face as he observed their surroundings. He caught her looking and offered a small smile, one that, for just a moment, reminded her powerfully of Darien. We'll find them, she promised him, knowing he would understand she meant the other composites. And we'll bring down the Council, together. Together, Corin agreed, the silver filaments beneath his skin pulsing with quiet determination. Family, in all its forms. Beyond the walls of Sanctuary Station, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of humanity. But within those walls, a new chapter was beginning, not just for Sarah and Corin, but for all those whose lives had been forever altered by the Council's experiments. The truth had been unhooded. What followed would reshape the future of human civilization across the stars, a future that would now include new forms of consciousness born from both triumph and tragedy, seeking their place among the cosmos.